There we go.
And we are hot. Folks, welcome to the share round section of the ABTA Tuesday Night Live. Let me get that share round music going here. Feel free to sing along if you know the words.
So everyone can see and hear you.
All right. Kenny, you got to share it around, buddy?
Yes.
Pretty close?
Go ahead.
Andrew, welcome to the party, pal. Hang tight, man. We're gonna roll intro, then you'll be hot, man. You're coming in, post briefing. So just smile and nod for a while, brother.
All right.
All right, man. Let the music play. Here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, friends, fans, and followers, welcome to this week's edition of the ABTA Tuesday Night Live Michigan event recap. You will notice a whole cast of characters on the screen. That's what happens when you're the host of the event, and you can hold all kinds of people victim to your shenanigans. So, yeah, guys, today we are going to talk about the Michigan event, which I think by most all accounts was a pretty successful event for the ABTA debut. And, we just want to talk about it today, always looking for ways to get better. We want to build on the good and, like I always close the show with more of the good and less of the bad. That's what we're always looking to do. And, we're unique today that we have a wide breadth of experience trackers joining us that were able to attend the event in Michigan. And from Dan Dawson, who's an aspiring tracker, doesn't even have a dog yet, right? Dan, you don't have a dog yet?
Oh yeah, I have a dog. Just haven't done any live tracks yet. He's in training.
Okay, so we got someone who hasn't taken a track yet and working with a dog, to folks like Calvin and Jim, who are well seasoned and well accomplished. And we're just going to have all of the perspectives from the various experience levels, to include judges with me, Kenny, Jim, and Calvin, and stuff like that. So, this is going to be a fun topic, a fun conversation. And as usual, we'll let it evolve on its own merit. Let me get to the comments here. We'll engage with the followers and things, and
especially Ryan Davis's comment there.
Yeah. He messaged me before I could, and I couldn't answer before we got on. So Ryan, we'll disclose it. But yeah, it's going to be a fun conversation. So before we dive in, let's just go around the room, as we say, and let's just do a quick tracker bio for all of our participants today. Tell us, who you are, where you're from, how long you've been tracking, what you're tracking with. Just some kind of condensed version of a bio, and then we'll, let's just talk about what we talk about. Jim, go ahead.
Jim Nugent, Mad Axe, Michigan. I've been tracking for 5 years. I track with a Beagle and a Bloodhound.
Beagle and a Bloodhound, a very accomplished Beagle.
Nice. I'm glad I got to witness the Beagle.
Boy, oh boy, it was wonderful. And we'll talk about it. Dan.
Yeah, not much of a bio. Just started training I have a mixed lab and blackmouth cur from Texas that I rescued, and he's got a great nose on him. So we're gonna give him a try.
Blackmouth cur?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. So you're all of a sudden Kenny's favorite. Andrew,
all right. My name is Andrew Pollock. I'm from Nanuet, New York, suburbs of New York City. My wife breeds minis, so I have a mini and a Teckle, and I just picked up a beautiful Bloodhound.
Yes, you did. And I got to tell you, if I'd known which Bloodhound you were getting from Ron, I'd have put you in a headlock, and you'd never seen that pup.
That's why I ran out of there. I grabbed my dog and got out of there.
Well, you did the right thing, brother, because if I'd known you were there for Little Britches, we'd have had a different meeting.
He's just a good and a great dog already. Just easy going, nice. I've never had a Bloodhound.
How about a little bit more salt in that wound, bro? Thanks.
Yeah. Hey, she's giving my Teckle a run for her money, though. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I'm sure of it. Kelvin, ABTA judge thrown into the fire and integral in the event. Tell us about.
Yeah, Calvin Dennis from Northern Michigan up. For those of that know Northern Michigan up by Frankfurt, but this will be my 5th season tracking coming up, and I've got 2 dogs. I run a Parsons Russell Terrier, which is similar to a Jack Russell, and then I've also got a Catahoula.
Yep. Frank.
Yeah, Frank Rotundi. I'm entering my 2nd season with my Teckle Mika, and yeah, we had a good year last year, and looking forward to the continued training and going into this year.
Yeah,
and I'm from Port Huron, about 3 or 4 miles from where Dan lives.
Yeah. So we have Frank and Dan on the extreme east coast of Michigan. Frank goes out on his back every morning and watches Canada, and then we have Jim also on the extreme, way at the tip of the thumb of Michigan, and then we have Calvin way in the upper left corner on the northwest coast of Michigan, and then you got me down here in the south central, and Kenny in Florida, and Andrew way over in New York. So let me see, Jim, you're probably the close. No, actually, it might be Dan or Frank is closest to Andrew right now. Oh, that's tough. So yeah. I just want to just kick it around today. Just kick it around. We have we have a perception of what we think it was. We've had a lot of favorable feedback. We recognize a couple of the hiccups which are going to happen, and we've already started as recent as yesterday and even before that how we smooth some of those hiccups out going forward. But despite the hiccups, I think it was, the feedback just seems overwhelmingly favorable. And I know I was truly humbled because the event started out, and let me just frame it a little bit. I before Kenny even set the hook on me to become a member, an engaged and active participant of the ABTA, I messaged him and said, "Hey, if you guys wanted to come to Michigan, I might be willing to set, this is through a Facebook chat. Yeah, let me talk to Ralph." He says, and this was a year ago, maybe not quite, I don't know. And well, then all of a sudden, I get asked to join the ABTA team, which I couldn't be happier for. So then I start a little more pressure, appropriate pressure. Hey, what do you guys want to do something in Michigan? Yeah, we can fit something in. And, the idea was we'll keep it a small one-day seminar, just kind of get our feet wet, do the ABTA introduction to Michigan, and we'll just do a little something, keep it simple. Okay. Well, that didn't last. As it continued to started to grow, and there started to become testing inquiries, and had no intentions of it being a testing event. It technically wasn't a testing event, but we jammed 6 tests in, 4 of which were finished level tests, which I have a whole new respect for now, having judged 2 and been judged on 1 at that event. And then we started advertising we were going to have an event. Then all of a sudden the people started talking, the Michigan folks, "Hey, are we going to, and what about this? I would like to, hey, can we talk about that?" Whatever. And people were reaching out to me. They're reaching out to Kenny. And it started to become evident what by and large, the Michigan people wanted. And that quickly grew, made the content grow. And wasn't much after that. Kenny called me and says, "Matt," he says, "look, I don't think we can do this in one day." He says, "I'm getting too many calls. What if we do a Garmin talk on Friday night?" I'm like, "I'm hooked. Yep. Let me get the haul for another day." So we got the haul for 2 days, and we did end up having the Garmin talk. Test weather, adjusted some of the scheduling, but we did the Garmin talk, and it was fun. And now, people are saying, "Well, hey, I think we need to have 2 full days next year." So that's how that grows, and that was kind of the
we had 2 days this year, all in one.
kind of we jammed it in. Yeah. We had a guest speaker with Ron Slifer came, killed 4 birds with 1 stone. I think he delivered 3 pups, and Andy got to speak at the event, which I was thrilled to death to have Ron come. So, that was a late add to the presentations, and there were some committed folks there. We ran extraordinarily late, and I gave everybody an opportunity to escape. I didn't want anybody to feel like they were being held hostage. I would have cut my presentation out, but folks wanted to stay, so we did. And I think everything turned out okay. So that's the quick lay of the land. Calvin was there and got thrown into the fire for judging, and Calvin we'll talk about that. But before we start kind of kicking it around, Kenny, what do you want to add?
That's pretty much it. You hit the nail on the head with everything.
Yeah. And it, there was a lot of work that went into it. And I owe a ton of thanks to to people like Kenny and Kayla Tyre, Ethan Young from Arkansas, Calvin jumped in, and just the Brandy Mullins and Dakota and Hunter helped out tremendously. And who am I forgetting? I don't know. Jim, you jumped in and administered your first test, and relatively impromptu. And there was just a lot of good people doing good things. Let's not forget the people back at home base with Carrie and Ralph, when we realized, oh shoot, we forgot a ribbon, and hey, can you print these certificates, and just helping helping from the home front, back in Florida. Those guys deserve the some kudos too. The local landowners we had, I don't even remember how many properties we had, local landowners that allowed us to use their property to test on. So there was a lot of people that really came together to make it a pretty successful event. And I couldn't be more thankful, more appreciative for that. I know I was overwhelmed at times, and the hell of it is, I feel like I worked hard, but I know I didn't work near as hard as Michael Beck did for the Pennsylvania event, for the work, because I watched all the work Michael did, and I'm like, man, I'm falling short here. But it was a lot of work, and it's a labor of love. I was glad to do it, and I'd do it again in a minute. I wouldn't do it next week. I need a little bit more time, but I feel a little melancholy now that it's over and all my track have left, and I'm sitting around here, but there was some really good stuff. So what I would like to do is I want to start with Andrew Pollock, because your participation in this live stream and your participation in the Michigan event was straight up happenstance, a serendipitous happenstance, if you will. And if you don't mind, tell us the story, man. Tell us your story, and then tell us
what about how I came down there, or
yeah, yep.
Well, I came to get the dog, and we got there early because Ron was late, and man, I had to go to the bathroom bad. I'm going to be honest. So I ran in. That nice lady said, just go ahead. And then, Matt, you were like, come on. And let me just say, this is going on my third year of tracking. And it's been like, I told you, Matt, I could have joined the Ku Klux Klan or the Hells Angels, a hell of a lot easier to get into this tracking business. Just to be honest with you, you guys, all of you, were so friendly and gave more. I've learned more from you guys and Matt and Ron in a few hours than 2 years here. There was one fella from Deer Search, a nice guy, Joe, here. He was quite helpful. But other than that, I don't know if they think it's a competition or something, but it's just different. You guys were great. I've never met people like, New York's a little different, but I've never met people. And Kenny, your wife, was talking to my wife and myself about the Teckles and everything. And, it was like a walking dictionary. I can't thank you guys enough. It was great. I learned so much in such a little time. And I'm going to tell you, Matt, I was cutting lawns after work tonight with my son, and I was listening to your last podcast and about mentoring, and I've never heard of this stuff before. So I'm glad now I'm going to be a follower on Tuesday nights to see what's going on.
Well, that's great, Andrew. And that's why I say a bit serendipitous. So yeah, Ron came up from Illinois. You were coming from New York to meet up with Ron to pick up a puppy. So we were rolling. We were well into the event when you guys got there. In fact, we were out on the elite test when you got there. So that was 2-3 hours in. And you still got to sit there and watch 2 hours or so, I think, didn't you, before Ron got there? No, we weren't out on the elite test yet. We were back. I'm sorry, I got my timing screwed up. But anyway, you got there well ahead of Ron.
Yeah, I got a good couple hours in, and like I said, it was like so educational. This guy Kenny, he's like a biologist. It was amazing how much he knew about all. I was like, whoa, no, everyone around here, they said, oh, just get a deer hide and put some blood on it and start dragging it, and I started my wife's little dog. My kids wouldn't hunt with me, so my wife's little mini started sitting in the stand with me, and it started into a blood tracking thing, So it kind of, like I said, fell right into my lap. And I didn't think minis were for tracking, but he got Lyme disease pretty bad, so I'm trying to save him. But I gotta say, he's like got the most heart. He's like my best tracking dog.
Yeah, they've got a lot of heart.
Yeah,
He's only 9 pounds. And he
Yeah.
goes and goes. He goes until his legs can't go no more. And now he's finally gotten to the stage where I can read him. And when he sits down and whimpers, the deer's not dead. I can pretty much read him now. And it's taken a few years. And that's what I love about tracking. I love working with the dog and watching the dog and see what they do. I've been having a little bit more trouble with the Teco watching her because she's just a maniac and runs through the woods. But we're still working with her, but like I said, you guys have been amazing, and I'm going to join you guys because I never seen such a nice group of people. I'm just telling you how I feel. You might say, oh, this guy's from New York. He's a tough guy from New York. It's a little different around here, like the one guy from Deer Search, the phone number goes right to his house. So he cherry picks every track before, and if he doesn't want to go on it, then he'll turn it on to me because I'm the only tracker in in Rockland, and I think he's in like Upper Westchester across the river, and he's the only one, but he's been doing it for a real long time. I think he's very good at what he does, and he's friendlies with John Jahini, the family there with.
Nope, we lost Andrew for a second. He'll probably be right back.
Yep.
Let's see. His internet glitched up. There you are, Andrew.
Yeah, there we go. We glitched out there. But, I asked him once if I could go on a track with this guy, and he said, yeah. And it just never, it was never going to happen. Yeah. So, I'd appreciate any help or, like Matt, you're like a coach over there. So you said keep your number. I got your number dialed in now, Matt.
Yeah, well, call me anytime, man. And that's really what it's about. And I'm willing to tell you, anybody listening to this show right now, and anybody that you're looking at on the screen right now, would welcome your call in a heartbeat to do what they can to help you.
We're all here.
I don't understand, Matt. In New York, it's on donation only, unless you got a guide license, and most of the guys, they don't. Guys upstate, asked me to help track for them when their dogs were down. It's just. Around here, it's just like, I don't know if it's cliquish or they don't want no one else to do it, or I don't know. Like, I called one guy in Jersey to ask him about a tackle, and basically what this man, I said this to Kenny's wife, and she knew the guy. He said, who the F are you to get one of my dogs? I just said, I'm sorry, sir, for bothering you, blah, blah, blah. Have a good night. I don't know. It's just different around here. You guys were just nice.
Just stick to the grind, and you got a support team here. Any of us are here to help you, and you'll do good.
I appreciate it, Kenny. You guys are all great. I can't say enough about you guys.
So, and very flattering, Andrew. Thank you so much. But I've got to ask you, in the time that you sat there, what was there something from the content perspective, from the presentation perspective that you saw that really jumped out at you and stuck and it left a big impression, or was it just pretty much?
Well, it really stuck in my head what he said about like dogs that are in the house all the time, and then all of a sudden you bring them out in the woods, and all of a sudden their noses just explode. I think Kenny was talking about that, and I try to run the dogs like twice a week minimum.
Yeah.
So,
and in that context, if they're kept in the house and never allowed to get out and experience the outdoors in other sense, then that could be, a bit of a problem. But if you're getting your dogs out, it's going to be okay. Yep.
Yeah, that's stuck in like today with.
Froze up again.
You there?
Yeah, we're here, buddy.
And like, with the sense when you guys did that bomb thing in the air, that just watching, I never realized how far it really carries.
Yeah. So what Andrew's talking about there, they did the same thing in Pennsylvania. We used a little called a confetti cannon, a little handheld confetti cannon to pop, and it really shows what thermals do to things that are light and friable. Although that confetti is heavier than scent, it really carried and lifted, and it really, really, really allows you to visualize what scent is really doing. When it comes out, it's floating along, and all of a sudden it goes up, and then all of a sudden you see it go down. Well, the confetti is not going to lift back up as the thermals rise, but guess what? The scent is, and it's going to do that again. So, yeah, it's very impactful and impressionable when you can see it. So, yeah, Andrew, I'm really glad you got a chance to come, man. And like I said, we're glad to call you a friend now, brother. So yeah, we look forward to joining.
You guys, thank you. And I'm closer to Pennsylvania next year. I'd like to go to Pennsylvania, but to me, it'd be worth taking the 9-10 hour ride back out to Michigan, because you guys were just on the ball.
Yeah,
you said things took a little longer. Things take a little longer because people are enjoying what you got to say.
Yeah, no,
New York people don't talk, and understand tracking or anything. It's just like people called me from the tracker and said our old dog ran away, and we got to find him. He's on the Channel 12 News. Bob, I said, you know what? I'll bring the dog over. Ruger would like to go for a walk. It was in the middle of winter. Well, Ruger took me 2 blocks one way, 2 blocks another way, 2 blocks. Took me to a backyard with a herd of deer, and I looked at the lady and I said, I guess my dog did exactly what he was trained to do.
Find deer.
It was pretty simple. I warned them, but we're in suburbia over here. It's not like big mountains of woods. It's houses, and deers come out of the little patches, eat in your front yard at night, and then go back in the woods.
Yep. Cool.
But again, I just want to thank you all. Thanks so much. It was great.
No, we appreciate it, Andrew, and you're more than welcome, brother. Thank you.
Oh, thanks.
I want to start with the other new guy, or now go to the other new guy, and Dan Dawson. So tell us, you're just getting started. You're there, friends with Frank. You came at the last minute, registered, the day before or whatever, which is perfectly fine. And we were glad to have you, buddy. So share. And you were there. You were one of the poor suckers that were there from sun up to sundown kind of thing. So how would you describe your experience, and what would you share with folks about your experience?
Well, I'll tell you what, I would say it was absolutely, I called it information overload. There's so much education and information that came from that seminar that I'm just like, this is wonderful. And I had to take so many pictures of the screen because there's no way I was going to remember absolutely everything. But the biggest thing that I took out of it was the science to it that Kenny brought to the table, that there was the science of scent, and the fact that, just the fact of, the analogy that really got to me is when you cut your grass, you go in your backyard and you don't really smell a whole lot. And then you cut your grass and it's like, it just comes alive and vibrant, and that's exactly what happens to the ground and the vegetation when we're walking all over it, and that's the kind of stuff that I never really thought of before, and, one of the biggest.
Ethan's analogy for disturbed earth. I mean, we were truly fortunate, and I mean this in all sincerity. We were truly fortunate to have people like Kenny Mullins and Ethan Young being able to speak and provide demos who do this professionally. We had 2 of them here, and we lucked out there, and so did all the attendees, and that's a pretty damn credible force. So I just had to put that out there. So I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I absolutely agree. You definitely could do that one in 2 days because it would fill the entire 2 days, you know, and just going on the test runs and seeing just how tough those tests really are, and how they really should be, you know. And when I'm out training my dog, you know, he's not seeing those kind of tests right now, you know, and he's doing well for what I'm giving him. But you know, the fact of the matter is I do need to get harder on him. I do need to test him more. I need to challenge him more, you know. And there's a lot of things that I've seen at that seminar that I definitely need to start doing, you know, just isolation drills. You know, me and Frank and I went and did one yesterday with our dogs, you know, did an isolation drill, you know. So that's the great thing about having a new friend in tracking right now. And believe it or not, Frank and I have known each other through our church, but didn't really come together until tracking. So we have a mutual friend in common who actually tracked my deer last year. And that's how I got into it. Is I just felt a calling. I mean, I'm a man of faith, and I believe that everything happens for a reason, you know. And when she brought her dog out and found my deer, I'm just like, are you kidding me? I've never seen this before, you know. And
Yeah.
I knew instantly what I wanted to do with my dog, you know. And he's 15 months old, and he's doing great, you know. But he definitely needs a lot of help. I need a lot of help, and it's nice to see the community aspect, and that's what I really took out of that seminar. Besides all the science and the education, was the fact that you guys are like community. You're like friends. You know, you're not competitive. You don't try to push people away because you're afraid of them taking your business. You know, and that goes a long ways, you know. So I'm grateful and happy I got to be there, and I definitely plan on getting involved in as much as I possibly can, including some education on the science aspect of it.
Yeah, be careful, buddy, because it becomes a compulsive disorder pretty darn quick. So, and you are already bitten, so there's no turning back now. It's like getting bit by a radioactive spider. I mean, you're going to get the powers, and there's nothing you can do about it. And
I'm glad I don't have a compulsive disorder.
Yeah, you don't have Kenny. No, not at all. Judas Priest. No, but Dan, no, I do appreciate that. And you hit on something that is really common, and it reinforces what Andrew said. Just a community, and that happens everywhere. It doesn't happen everywhere. You know, the tracking world can be difficult sometimes. You know, by and large, it's pretty inclusive, but it can get tough at times. And to me, you know, and Andrew, you missed my opening monologue when I tried to set the stage, and you know, to me that's what it is. We are here to not be better than anybody else, but only to be as good as we can be, and then to help each other be as good as they can be. You know, and if we do that, and if we approach things that way, the tracking community can be an unstoppable force and make have an incredible impact. And I'm talking coast to coast. I don't give a darn what organization, what state club, what state group, what national group you're a part of. If we approach things as in an inclusive, from an inclusive perspective, in to which we are just trying to make ourselves as good as we can be, while trying to help somebody else be as good as they can be, you know, you've really got something there. And I'll get off my pulpit, but you know, that is very, very important to me. That is very, very important to me. So, and we'll all have time to talk, but I'm going to walk through everybody's opening statements, so to speak. I'll call them in order of experience. So that being said, and I guess I kind of got out of order. No, a little bit, but it doesn't matter. Go. So, Frank, it's your turn, buddy. Unmute yourself and tell us all about your experience. And we met in Grayling last year. Frank and I met in Grayling last year at the event last August in Grayling, Michigan, and have established a really good friendship. I wish she wasn't so far away so we could get together and train easier, but that will happen at some point. But
Yeah, for sure.
tell about your perspective, bud.
This was only my second event. But right off the start, we Dan and I pulled in, we got out of the truck and we were immediately greeted by the people that already knew us. And how have you been? How'd the last season go? Like we've known each other forever. And most of us had just met last year in Grayling. And then some other folks that were around, we introduced ourselves to them. They introduced themselves to us, and it's just, I mean, just like Andrew was saying, it's just a community of good people that not anyone that was there put themselves above, like myself or Dan being new. No matter what the experience level was, we're in the room. We're all on the same level as far as communicating and learning. And one of the things, definitely kudos to Kenny. I just wanted to say about the when we were going over scent drift and how the wind can affect, how the water can affect. And I had a conversation with Calvin yesterday, and I was telling him about this. Is that you can go and somebody can talk to you about what wind drift does and what the thermocline does, and the scent on water or the scent on dry leaves. They can tell you what that does, but the demonstrations that were put on they really sunk in, and now you kind of have a visual of what's going on. Now when we get put into those situations where we got thermal that's going up in the air, now I've got that visual of that confetti cannon going off on what can really happen when I'm on dry leaves, in a stand of oaks or something, and the leaves are dry and wind's blowing. Okay, well, deer, we may see blood if we're fortunate enough. We may see blood here, but the scent could be 15, 20, 30 yards away. Who knows?
Yep.
And, I think I mentioned before that one of the things that I wanted to do was work on line discipline this year, line discipline and learning to read my dog. Well, now that I've, went through this seminar, now I'm thinking, you know what, line discipline's good, but line discipline doesn't mean you're on top of the line. Line discipline means you're on top of the scent. And, with seeing those types of demonstrations and stuff, that just, that really hit home for me. And then, there's many people that I could give kudos to. All your stuff was great, Matt. I was just standing out when we went out into the field to watch those grid searches and the working out the 90 and whatnot. Calvin, very experienced tracker. We just start talking like we've known each other forever. And it was nice to be able to stand there with an experienced tracker and kind of pick their brain. And they're willing to tell you everything that they know or help you in any way that they can. That's just, it's just great. And like Andrew said, the way that you're treated there is like nobody's better than anybody else. In reality, they are as far as their tracking experience and their dogs, but they don't show that. Everybody's willing to help you. I know I asked a couple questions of Kenny and when I asked a couple of those questions, I had two or three other guys say, "Hey, talk to me in a little bit. I'll tell you my experience with it." So everybody was more than willing to help, and you had great speakers. I think you guys did an awesome job, and I had a great time. And Matt, like I told you, if you guys wanted to go to 4 a.m, I was going, but I'd had to drag Dan along with me, but I was in. So yeah, you guys did an awesome job. I had a great time.
No, I appreciate that, buddy. Sure do. Yeah. Calvin, you were thrown into the fire with judging, brother. So let me set this stage. Calvin was going through the applicant. We cut, so the phases for those that are curious. Our parlance for the judging process is an applicant judge, an apprentice judge, and a judge. Okay, so the applicant judge is somebody who's going through the process. And I'm not going to outline the process here, but it's a process. Calvin had been doing that. I was mentoring him through that. He was right on the cusp of being able to, he had one more line to submit, then we were going to be able to send it to the committee and get the approval, have him take the online test, and he's going to go. Well, along come the Michigan event. Calvin comes in as an applicant judge, and he leaves there having judged a finished line. So his ears were pinned back. Just a finish line under the mentorship of Kenny. Let me qualify that. He wasn't just thrown out there all by himself. A finish line requires two judges anyway. But he judged a finish line. And he got to, I'll say, apprentice judge on the elite line with Ethan. So you walk in on Friday as an applicant judge. You leave there on Saturday night as an elite level apprentice and ready to roll on finish lines. So your ears were pinned back. So go ahead and talk about it, bro. And that and your experience in general with the seminar.
Well, before he goes, I just want to say,
you
saw the look on his face whenever we got on that finish line, and he goes to hand me his garment. I said, "No, this is on you." You can see the look on his face. Go ahead, Calvin.
I think most of this starts back. The event started on Friday with testing, and I specifically remember it was about 12:30 on Thursday afternoon. I was about ready to leave my house. It's a 3-hour and 20-minute drive down to Matt's place. And I called and said, hey, I'm getting ready to leave. Is there anything that you could think of that I might need to bring? And he said, make sure you got Woods clothes with you and, your tracking shoes and a couple sets of hooves. And I said, well, I've already got all that. So I said, I'll see you in 3 hours and 20-some minutes. So I specifically remember 5 minutes from being to where I was going to be and called Matt again just to say, hey, I'm getting close. And you said, well, we're waiting for you. And what that turned into was me and Ethan trudging through the woods until about 11 o'clock that night with the mosquitoes and the ticks and everything else that was out there, along with the 80-degree weather, the lightning bugs. But to be quite honest, I wouldn't have looked at doing it any different. Being thrown into the mix. Yeah, I was a little nervous to start with, but by the end of that weekend, I was very comfortable. I can't thank Ethan and Kenny enough for, being there and just kind of helping me through the process. I said this to Ethan, even though he didn't know that he was teaching me during the apprentice program, if you would, through judging. Everything that he was doing, I was picking up and I was taking notes in my mental note, and just a lot of what he was doing was really just helpful for me, and it made me more comfortable with what was going on. So I've spoke with Ethan a couple times already, but I can't say enough about Ethan and what he did for me over the weekend. And even though, like I say, I was thrown into the mix, I really had an enjoyable time. And coming into that event, kind of the cool thing for me, and especially I think Matt, being an admin for the Michigan Deer Tracking Network, we get to see faces of people all the time on Facebook. We get to talk to people through text or I've talked to Jim a few times on the phone, but never met him in person. And I think Frank said it, when we see those people, you go up to them and you start talking to them like you've known them forever. And I think that's kind of the cool part for me. Being able to see those people in person and talk to them. You feel like you've been part of their life for years because you've been watching all that stuff on Facebook and you see what's going on with them all. But to be able to sit down and actually have a conversation with them in person, it means a lot to me. I really enjoy that. So that was a big takeaway for me. But as far as the seminar goes, There's so much stuff that, we've talked about this, Matt and I, especially the last couple of days. There's so much stuff that we can sit here on this video. We can talk about, we can discuss, we could draw pictures with crayons. You could describe everything you want, but until you see some of those activities in person, you just don't get the gist of what exactly you're talking about or what is really happening. And I think that's the big thing, especially for new people who maybe they understand the process, but they don't understand the actual application of it. And that's where it really hit home for me, even though I've been tracking for, a few years now, and I've got the gist of what's going on. I mean, some of that stuff was just, it made me open my eyes, and it really maybe just drew a little bit closer for me to some of the stuff that I already knew about, but I had a hard time maybe describing either to my hunters or other trackers. So I think that's a lot of what really helped me this weekend.
Yeah. Yeah, that's for sure, man. And we did talk a lot, and we'll continue to talk a lot. And I think we're setting things up for some really good stuff to come. With the foundation that we're building, the people that are engaging and want to be engaged, and the sponges that I am, you are, all of us are. I think I'm just excited about what can be, because it can be really good. And I can be, I'm thrilled to death. Like I said, I got to have all my buddies down, and I say down because we're in the southern part of Michigan, but it was a lot of fun. A lot of fun. So Jim, as the senior, not counting Kenny, but as the senior tracker, like I said, we have someone in Dan who's about as green as a green tomato. He's got a dog, been doing some work, but never tracked a deer. And now we've got Jim, who's been doing it for how long, Jim?
5 years now. So
5 years with a 5-time certified dog. So tell us, what would you say? What's your opening monologue about your experience?
Well, for the new people, I was there one time. I understand and I completely get what you're going through. I remember the first Scentworks I went to, and it was weird because everyone was there talking, and I was there with my son, and I come to run it was a UBT event, and I went to run my first test, and I was nervous, and but people took me in and talked to me, and it's community, and don't be afraid to pick up a phone and call someone, because everyone's going to be happy to give you some time when you have a question, because there will be a lot of questions that come up for you through the years. I even pick up the phone now and still call guys and ask them things. So, and as the event, like Calvin said, this was the first time him and I sat down face to face and talked, and we had a great conversation, like we've known each other for a while, a long time. So, and that's the nice thing about this is, we see each other's stuff all the time, but, and you get in real life and you start talking like just old buddies. So, and as far as the event, I thought the content was great. The demonstrations were great. It painted a very vivid picture for people coming in for the first time. Even myself, I took away some new things to work on and do from things that Kenny said and Ethan said. Just very invaluable, information, that's so, I mean, it was great, the information that we got and the things that we were able to see.
Well, and not only were you receiving information, Jim, you contributed information too. You contributed to the very significantly to the Garmin talk that we did on Friday night. Heck, I learned some things from you on that, and I was the one talking through the Garmin stuff. It was going to be Kenny, but they got weathered on Daryl's finish test, and that got extended. So I stepped up and started, and it turned out good. And with your contributions, it was very good. You were able to, and I want to talk about that grid search stuff, and we're going to get into just the demonstration specifically in general. But your contribution with Copper and just the way he works on the grid search demonstration, that
You can't forget his test line.
Well, and I was going to get to that. But Craig Reeder even commented, and he was there, and we'll read it in a minute. But commented on the grid search thing, and Copper was absolutely the right dog to do that. Not that somebody else's dog wasn't, but just Copper's tracking style really maximized the benefit of that demonstration. I think is a fair way to put it.
The slow, methodical. I'm gonna go check every corner that was disturbed, pretty much, and that's how he is.
And he did that, and he did that on his test line too. And like I said, we'll get to the test line because I do want to spend some time talking about it. Because, geez, Pete's was that fun, unpleasant in terms of the scorching heat. But boy, it was just a freaking joy to judge.
Well, hop on a plane and come on down here, and I'll trade with you.
Yeah, you're down there in the double
we're good.
Yeah,
we like this cooler weather,
and it's quite pleasant up here today. Ken, you'd have your wool socks on today. It's probably
I could use it today. I was ready to head straight back.
Yeah. So Kenny, what let's throw it to you for a few minutes. You've heard everybody else talk. You have, and what I want to do is dive into particularly the demonstrations, whether it was the tabletop demos that we did and the things outside. I want to hear in detail, from the guys that were there. But before we do that, Kenny, what I'll give you an opportunity to riff a little bit.
Yeah, so the last couple of years, I've been kind of sharing the stuff that I've studied on the science of scent and how a dog's nose work, how the scent works, the volatile scents and the non-volatile scents and thermals and all that stuff like we talked about at the event. And it just seemed like over time people left with more questions than anything. And so this past year, I've really been trying to figure out how I can pair what I'm sharing with some visual aids so that people could really grasp it. Because it's really hard, like, talking about, the updraft, like with the confetti cannon. I mean, that I didn't even realize when I first tried it that it was going to work as well as it did, because, it's seeing see that confetti go out, some of it falling, some of it rising, some of it, drifting left, some of it drifting right. And then the stuff that falls starts rising back again. I mean, I didn't expect it to work that good. But it really put into perspective. And if the confetti that's that big and that heavy moves that much, what happens when you have a light piece of dander or odor particle?
Yeah.
And stuff like that. And then, the trying to give a demonstration where people could take it and share with hunters so that they could relate or understand. That's huge. One thing I do, like just keep a thing of baby powder in your truck. And when they start talking about the rain washed all the sin away, just take it out, and you're going to have a bottle of water with you, and show them, hey, let me put this on the ground. Let me pour water all over it. Where'd it go? It didn't just wash away. It's there.
Right.
And just stuff like that, and that was my goal this year, was to come up with different ways that I could demonstrate it where people could fully grasp it and put all together.
Yeah, I agree. And I think we did a remarkable job. You did a remarkable job of that. And Ethan too, with the work that he did, but those scent demos, because you're right. What we're trying to do is take a theory and make it tangible. Scent theory, and then turn it into something that people can actually see and understand. It's, theory is hard to understand. And, I really think we did a pretty darn good job of that. At least the feedback suggests so. And what I saw, I would say we damn sure did.
It's just like on Jim's test line, when you laid that line down in that bottom, and his dog at the end was working on the top, I could tell people all day long, and especially if you have an apprentice judge with you, you can explain, to see that he's working, basically 30 yards off the line, but working it perfectly parallel, and I could try to explain that, but when you can see how the thermals work, you can really understand it. And we explained it that day, and then when the dog was working perfect, and I know I'm getting into his test a little bit, but trying to explain, parallel that line, and then as that terrain started going down, and you had the wind coming this way, and thermals coming this way, but the wind was overpowering, and everything just sucked down into that bottom, and if we would have been worried about line discipline and not allowed him to work that 30 yards parallel, he would have been down in that bottom and would have never got out of it.
Yeah, probably not. Yeah. And to throw another whole freaking set dynamic in that. So to just set the stage on that a little bit, that the low area you're talking about was like a 6-foot deep bowl with a pretty steep cliff. Now I could walk up it with scent shoes, so it wasn't that steep, but it was steep. And
most of it was you couldn't have.
Yeah, that's true. But it was a low swamp area, and it was like a carved out bowl, and it was right towards the end of the line. So we were probably 50 yards or so from the end of the line, maybe a little bit more. So we had the leg hanging at the end of the line. Jim didn't know this. We had in the wind coming from some version of from the leg. So we had this giant scent pool with all of these downfalls and just entangled things where the scent was piling up. We had the thermals of the actual line going through the low spot. I climbed up that ridge, and so we had Jim was contending and Copper was contending with the scent pool, the thermals sucking them down, the wind pushing them in, and the scent was just jammed up everywhere in there. And you're right, Copper worked so perfectly, so it was just the weirdest thing. The wind was coming this way, thermal was pulling it up this way, and it must have been this perfect little convergence of scent, because Copper walked right down to the very tip of that ridge, just as pretty as you please, where all of that came together. I think Kenny and I looked at each other, we go, holy crap. Jim didn't know that, but it was just the coolest damn thing. That was a cool line.
Yeah, and then being able to go back the next day and put all that together in the classroom with the visual aids,
Yeah.
And Jim can look, reflect back on his test line the day before. I'm like, oh, this is where all this came together. And I kept referencing back to that because Copper and Matt, we didn't even talk about this, but when we were on top of that ridge, I watched Copper go about, it may have been 4 or 5 yards to the left away from the original trail.
Yeah.
And immediately snapped back. And it was like you said, you could see that definitive wall where that wind was coming this way. Those thermals were coming up, and he just hit that brick wall of scent.
He absolutely did. Yeah, it was, and then he just kept kind of getting, Copper himself was being sucked a little bit at times towards that bowl. So there was just some really weird stuff is being sucked down, but it was at the same time it was coming up. There could have been some eddying. It was just the coolest damn thing. Jim's like, yeah, you scoundrels, that was horrible. And Kenny and I go back here, this is the coolest crap ever. Look at this.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to get into his test line a lot, but just talking about the scent. But I do want to say I didn't know where that line was laid.
No, you didn't.
I wasn't there when it was laid.
No,
but I could read a dog, and I knew what was going on with the thermals due to the temperature, and I seen the moisture in that bottom and the wind direction, and I, in fact, I even turned to you. I asked. I said, "Where's that line at?" Because I knew we just had a strong feeling we weren't on that line when I was putting all that together.
Right.
And because I've studied so much, I tend to overanalyze things. I say overanalyze, but I mean I nailed it.
Look at things very, very analytically. Yes.
Yes, and it's just when you're able to put all that together, and I think a lot of you that's seen this today, you're going to look at your training differently. And Ethan's verbiage and terminology nails it. Line discipline and task discipline. What you need to worry about is the task discipline.
Yeah, year one. Yeah, yep. And when I had not heard those terms before. I mean, I've heard line discipline, and that's all I'd heard. Well, and I first heard task discipline with Ethan when I was shared a line with him, and he mentioned it. I'm like, wow, that was a eureka moment for me and a very defining moment in how I approach things, because all of a sudden line discipline didn't mean a damn thing to me. And it doesn't now. I want the task discipline. Is my dog committed to the task in relation to, finding the scent? And the scent may not be on the actual line or the source. The scent, as we demonstrated, it could be anywhere. And as long as she's committed to finding and progressing that line, I don't care how disciplined she is to climb on top of the source.
Right. And I know I'm going to get off on a rabbit chase here a little bit, but I want to take a minute and give some credit to Ethan.
Please.
Ethan, he really came onto the tracking scene out of nowhere for me. Just one day, I don't even know who Ethan is. The next day I'm seeing some good stuff coming from him, so I start following him and I start paying attention. And, he reached out a little over a year ago about becoming a judge. And quite frankly, he was stagnant. And I was like, is this guy even going to do anything? And then this year he came on strong, and, he's been instrumental for our organization.
Yes.
Well, this was the first seminar that I've worked with Ethan as far as on the educational side. We worked together on the testing side. And one thing I want to say, Ethan's got some experience, but one thing I want to say is I didn't expect the level of knowledge out of Ethan that he has. And I'm not saying that like I judged him or anything, but typically someone at his level you would think
his age. I mean, he's young. Sorry, Ethan, you're young. You're my daughter's age, Ethan.
Yeah. You would think he would have 30 years experience,
Yeah.
and as we talked, and I told him, I said, hey man, I got all this put together. What part do you want? What do you want to do this? You want to do that? And he's like, I'll do whatever. And we worked very well together. We bounced things back and forth off of each other. And, I just want to give him a lot of credit. I mean, there's worked with a lot of people over the years in this industry. And Ethan's got it together.
Yep.
And I'm giving him credit for that.
Yeah, and we're fortunate to have him as part of the organization because he's instrumental in propelling us forward. I couldn't agree with that more. Yep. So let's talk a little bit about the demos and drills, I'll call them. The demonstrations. Whether it's a tabletop demonstrations on encapsulated scent and how scent interacts with water, or it was outside demonstrations with the confetti cannon or the baby powder. We used baby powder in a couple of instances. We did the grid search demo, and I want to talk about that one very specifically at some point. But right now, just in general, we did the directed search. We did the 90-degree turn in reading the dog. We did the what else did we do? What am I missing? There was another one in there. Maybe not. But from a drills and demos perspective, and I'm just going to put it out there. I'm not going to call on anybody. Just chime in. What was your favorite? What was the biggest one for you that was a light bulb, or what was your biggest takeaway from demos and drills? And you don't have to talk about just one. Go ahead, Kenny.
With this many people on it, it'd probably be good to go, call on each of them.
All right. Well, let's do it. And Andrew, I wish you could have seen some of them, but just listen along, brother.
Just you guys, what you just said about the dog walking like 30 foot. My Teco walks parallel to the line 30 foot with her nose in the air, and it drives me nuts. And I just follow her, but I guess you're right. As long as she gets the home run, it's all that matters.
That's right.
And what you said today about less blood, I think I'm using way too much blood, and it's just up and she's just smelling it everywhere.
Just get rid of that blood.
Exactly.
Put it away.
Okay.
You don't need the blood. But
you just taught me a lot.
Yeah, and we can talk more about that offline if you want, Andrew. Okay. You can talk with Kenny. You can call any of us. But I'd be glad to talk to you about it. But Frank, man, let's demos and drills. Your favorite and why?
One of the biggest ones that excuse me, was a real eye opener to me is the demonstration on the grid search, where and I'm sure quite a few people had it in their mind. When somebody talks about grid search, we're thinking, they've taken all the scent off the line. It's all over their boots. We've spread it over by whatever area that the grid search is taking place in, whether it be 20 yards by 20 yards, or if it's 100 yards by 100 yards. And it's not so much that like Kenny was explaining in this thing after the questions came up, was it's not so much that you're spreading the scent. I'm sure that takes place as well, that you're tracking scent all over the place too, but
minimally.
It's that disturbed earth that is really making it difficult for the dog to be able to pick up on the scent because it's so strong. And then to see the demonstration when Ethan went out and did the fresh grid search versus the grid search that was 8 hours old, you can see after that the earth area where the original one was done 8 hours prior had time to settle. It was much easier for the dog to pick up on.
So let me just frame that a little bit more. And I knew you were probably going to say that because that was a very popular one, and we'll read Craig's comment on it. But so what we did is we laid, for those watching at home, when I say we, I mean Ethan, laid 2 lines with the same set of hooves at the same time. Just straight lines, 70 yards long, whatever it was, just straight lines. paralleled each other with reasonable distance between them. When he laid those lines, he went back and grid searched one immediately. Laid the line, grid searched it right away. At that point we let them bake all day because it was on a mowed grass, pure sunlight and wind blown, recreational baseball field is what it was at the hall. Let them bake all day. When it came time to run the demo later that evening, we probably didn't get out to do the demo till 7:00 or something like that.
The lines had laid 11 and a half hours.
Yeah. The lines had laid 11 and a half hours. So we had 11 and a half hour old line, one of which had an 11-hour old grid search on it. The other one was 11 and a half hour old line that had a 10-minute grid search on it. And the idea here was we all see, and I was this way, the theory is grid searches are bad because you're just what Frank said. You're spreading that, you're picking up the blood, the pheromone, the dander, the breath, the wound gases, all of the deer specific cocktail you're picking up on your shoes, and you're transporting it around, creating false lines. That is the conventional wisdom in the tracking community as to why you don't grid search. Well, if that were so we did that, okay. So then we put Jim volunteered Copper. We let Copper run. We didn't tell anybody which was which, and we let Copper run both, and we let the crowd try to determine which was which. And one line, and Ethan has just got some fantastic video of this. One line.
We can share it after this if you want.
Oh, okay, yeah. One line, Copper took a couple of minutes, to work through all of the grid search, and then boom, next he lines out and he gets over to the wood line to the end of the line. Then we go over to the other line. Copper sniffs around, takes inventory for about 30 seconds, and marches straight down the line. And it took him less than a third of the time to work the second line than it did the first line.
So the second line was 6 times faster. He was able to work through the grid search almost 6 times faster by letting it lay that hour and a half or 11 and a half hours.
So what does that prove? The second line was 6 times faster. Yeah, Ethan just said that. Yep, 6 times faster. So what could we conclude from that grid search demo?
Well, even more than it being 6 times faster, it was a dead straight line, the exact same way that it was walked. If all of that scent was dispersed, it would not have been the perfect straight line that was walked. Perfect line disappointment.
Yeah, and that's exactly where I was going. So that to me would conclusively determine that. Now listen, sure, maybe some deer specific scent was transported, but it wasn't enough to create a false line. So to me, it is incredibly conclusive that the effects of grid searching is not transferring deer specific scent. It is just
as much as we think.
As much as we think, yeah, that's right. It is the disturbed earth and human scent that is left that causes the strife for the dog, and that dissipates much faster than deer-specific scent, particularly pheromones. So grid searches are not a scary thing anymore. Just wait. Did you grid search? Okay, cool. When did you shoot the deer? 12 hours ago. Okay, cool. I'll be out. I'll be out at the 20-hour mark. and that grid search will in essence be a non-factor because and it was to me it was incredibly eye-opening.
So Matt, I'd like to go back to when I first talked about wanting to do this.
Yeah.
In your initial reaction.
Yeah.
You know, whenever I first told you, hey Matt, this is what I want to do.
So this is how this particular drill all came about. It was I was mildly skeptical, but it got my wheels turning on other streams and stuff that Ethan were on, and just other conversations in general. How disturbed Earth, and it really came up talking about scent gaps when you're doing scent gap training. Okay, this is how it started triggering my head. I mean, I'm talking several weeks ago. You guys were talking about scent gap training, how if you want to train for a scent gap, you have got to let that scent gap age. Otherwise, the dog marches right through it. I mean, I think Ethan started talking about like, what? And then you started confirming it, Kenny, and you guys engaged in this conversation. I just say with my face hanging out, like what? So that started getting me thinking about it. And then, that eventually turned into conversations about how, kind of the same thing about grid searching. And it was relatively just incidental conversation. So then as we started doing this, and I started applying that to, okay, grid search is disturbed. I'm like, well, how? Then if that's the case, then that should be able to be demoed. I mean, grid searches aren't a problem. So we say, okay, so let's do this. But then I'm still skeptical. I'm like, Kenny, Ethan, are you sure this is going to work? Because if it will, it's going to be almost a paradigm shift in the way we talk about grid searches and what they do to a line. So I wanted to make sure that if we demo this, it was really going to work, because I had not seen it before. I didn't get a chance to practice it or test it. And Kenny and Ethan go, yeah, it's going to work. It's going to work. I'm like, oh my God. Okay. I'm going to trust you guys. I hope it works. But I was nervous that we were
I had actually done it quite a bit for a while.
Okay.
It's just something that I was keeping in my hip pocket and not really sharing, but it's stuff we've incorporated in our training for a couple of years now.
Well, and that's why I trusted both of you guys, because you guys have used this before. But to me, that is just, it's so contrary to the conventional wisdom of why grid searches are bad. So we all talk about the pheromones, the blood, and all that being tracked around. We definitively proved that is not happening to the extent that it is detrimental to the line.
So I want to touch on a comment right there.
Tom's?
Yes. So he reached out to me with that text, and I'm going, and I responded, but I'm gonna go ahead and say it here. I've done it with blood. It doesn't make a difference. All the bodily fluids in the blood dissipates quicker as well. And you're more than welcome to test it yourself, but I can tell you I've tested it many, many times. It won't make a difference.
Well, and to that point too, the blood, they're not tracking the blood. There's no pheromone in the blood. If the pheromones is really kind of the key ingredient of the deer scent that's being tracked, that blood should not distract them from that much at all.
No, really, you got to think of blood as a super absorbent, like a cotton ball. I mean, you have iron scent, but really it's what it makes contact with. And then if there is any infection with that, typically you're not going to see that infection on the grid search part of the line on a real track.
Because it's
going to take time. That's going to be, but you do have some evolving things going on with bacteria and all that. But even then, all of that dissipates quicker.
Yeah.
And you can research all this, and you can go out there and lay a grid search and put blood all over it, all that you want. And you're going to see the results. I've done it many, many times. It's going to be the exact same.
Yeah. Okay, Shane, I agree. So let me back down. I would caution using the word "prove," but it's certainly an interesting theory worth more testing. So yeah, you're right.
Well, I can tell you, I've done it 100 times, 100+ times, and the results are the same every time. If you don't want to believe it, get out there and do it. I encourage you.
I'm going to do the test with blood because Tom reached out to me too, and I'm like, you know what? You're okay. Fair enough, but I don't anticipate there to be any substantive difference. But I do want to.
There's none, and I'll tell you, I literally poured a half a bucket of blood on the ground and walked through it and walked all over. And I'm telling you, I encourage you guys. It'll motivate you to get out there and try it. So please do. Please prove me wrong, because I want you to get out there and be motivated to try it.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to, just because I got to scratch that itch now, and I want to see that demo again, and we will.
It's awesome. Like I said, this is something we've done a couple of years now in our training, and I've done some things in the past that worked initially that didn't long term didn't pan out how I thought they would, but this is one that it's consistently works in time and time again. And it's just science. I mean, if you just the information's out there. I'm not a scientist, but the information's out there. You can look at dissipation rates and degradation rates, and it's all out there, and it's all been proven in other fields. May not have been proven in the past in our field, but it's been proven in other fields like man trailing.
Yeah, that's true. I have read recently since then about the man trailing world. So, but in fairness, I guess proven might be because we're not an accredited testing organization in terms of grid search stuff. That's fair, but it's very compelling and certainly.
Who is an accredited?
I don't know. Some scientific scent experts, whatever an expert is. But so anyway, let's go back. So that was anything else, Frank? Any other impactful demos that you liked or really left the mark for you?
I could go through them all, but then nobody else is going to be able to talk. But one of the things that I really took home from this, and like Dan said, we've already taken advantage of these isolation drills. You don't have to go out and lay a 600, 700, 800 yard track. You can work on the small things in small areas and accomplish a specific task, and make your dog better. And not only make your dog better, but to be quite honest with you, I need the most work. My dog knows what her job is, and she knows what the scent is and knows what she's supposed to do. It's my job to be able to read her and know when she's doing her job and when she isn't doing her job, knowing when she's crittering and when she's on the line. Okay. So those little isolation drills, especially when you lay them yourself, you know where the turns are, or where the scent gap is, or you're going to know where you went across that dirt road, and you can see the difference or try and pick out the differences in your dog when they're on that line and when they're not on that line. And you're not in the woods having to worry about tripping over logs or whatnot. You can really take the time to work on it. And then I also want to thank you guys for helping me with my Garmin, to be able to learn how to do that overlay when I lay the line, and then be able to watch her on the line afterwards and be able to look at it and actually see what she did. When you're in the moment, I could say, somebody could ask me, how'd she do on that first 90? Well, she struggled a little bit. She made a few turns and then she found her way back to it. when you actually get to see it on the overlay, it really shows you what really happened. And so that's going to be a tremendous help for me to be able to get better at reading her as well and seeing what she's actually doing.
So Frank, my heart hurts a little bit. After my presentation, you still refer to her problem solving that 90 as struggling.
No. Well, I mean, yeah, if someone was to ask me, but Matt did ask me, after I shared that line with him, Matt said, "Is this a good ugly or a bad ugly?" And I said, "It's definitely a good ugly, right? It looked ugly, but she worked it out on her own, and she got right back on that line." So
she didn't struggle a bit, brother. She problem solved, and that's exactly.
Yeah, exactly I misspoke. I'm sorry.
Thank you. I'm kidding. Kelvin, old vet like you, man. What anything particularly impactful for you?
I think one of the things that
noteworthy or whatever
was probably for me. I mean, I don't know if I'd call myself a veteran by any means, but there's something to be learned every time you go out and lay a practice track. And probably one of the coolest things for me was when we did that controlled search. For those that maybe didn't see it or don't know what that is, Ethan had put up markers on either side of this little opening, 30 yards apart, and he had laid a line in there about 6 hours prior. Nobody knew where the line was but Ethan. Kenny and I were standing there. Even Kenny and I had no idea where it was at. And one of the cool things for me was, being able to stand there, and I had this conversation with Ethan, watching somebody else's dog. Every dog has a read of some sort, and they're all going to be very similar in ways. But it was very cool for me to stand there and watch those dogs work that line and really try to pick out exactly where they went into the woods at. And, to watch some of those newer trackers stand there and kind of watch it themselves and just see. And for me, being able to follow behind my dog, knowing when she's crittering, Kenny and I were kind of laughing because we seen every dog go to the critter spot. And some of those people were it was a wrong read. But for me being able to see that, being that I've read enough dogs now and kind of followed behind, that was a cool experience for me, and I really enjoyed that part of it. So, and having a couple guys standing next to me and just, they were asking some questions on like, well, okay, so what did you see from that? And I think that helped with them too, because, Ethan was off doing his own thing. And so for those guys standing next to me to be able to say, hey, like, what did you see there? How did you read that dog? Or what was it that gave it away that's where the line was? And I really enjoyed that aspect of it. So,
yeah, Calvin, I want to touch on one thing, and I know you saw it as well as I did. Courtney DeMello's dog, the big black lab.
Kit, yep.
Her dog went down the proper line. Now she marked wrong. She tried to guess.
She had that spot picked before she even went out there.
Oh yeah. But I went out there and I put a ribbon where her dog hit on it at first, and you and I both seen that dog lock in, and it went on a straight line, but it was a solid probably 10, 12 yards from the actual line when it locked in.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I don't know if anyone else, really saw this, but all the other dogs, they hit it, but they were right on it. And her dog, I mean, you could tell that you could see it, the head snap, and you could see it really lock in from about 12 yards away, and then got up there and bam, locked in, turned left and nailed it. But, those are the things I pick up on, is seeing that dog just locked in on it from that far away, and it nailed it.
Yeah, I mean, it was a cool experience just to watch all the different breeds. I think that was kind of the neat thing for me, is to see all the different breeds and how they picked that scent out. That lab picked it up from a distance, but traditionally those labs are going to be an air center, and that was the distance that it picked it up from. Some of those other dogs had their nose locked right down tight to the ground, and that's why they grabbed it where they did. And so, it was just a neat experience for me to see that. I mean, you don't traditionally get to go out in the woods with 5 or 6 other dogs at one time to be able to watch them work a line like that, and that controlled search. The other cool part is being able to watch everybody's approach on how they would go about that controlled search. And no fault to any of those people that did it this way, but they kind of went out there into the center of the 30-yard area, and then they just kind of said, like, okay, find it, and they just let their dog start running around. And I don't mean that as in like the dog didn't know what it was doing, but they just kind of let it go off on its own and make them search for it. But I was in my own head kind of discussing, like, okay, how would I go about this? And I may have mentioned it to Frank. I would typically come in from one end and work to the other end, and that way the dog has the best ability to kind of grab that line, and I can see when that changes. And then Ethan did that with the dog at the end. So it was kind of neat to watch how people would go about that whole scenario, how they would work and problem solve that. And, that's kind of the cool thing with that is you get to see everybody's approach to it. It wasn't just, here's the generalization of what we should do and how we're going to do it, and everybody does the same thing.
Yeah. And that right there, we see it. And this kind of goes back to the grid search thing, and I won't use the word prove, but it had, I am. So being able to do that control search, like on a finish line, and being able to pick up that line, especially when we made the transition, when we went from doing that grid search the night before and doing it just before the test, the morning before the test, it made that test significantly harder having that fresher grid search.
Yeah.
And it requires a much better controlled search by the dog and handler. And we saw that with both Jim and Daryl. Daryl did a good job. He started out just how you said, going from one side to the other. And I think it was the second time they were coming back when she locked in on it. Same thing. Poor Jim. Matt started him off in the wrong area completely. There was literally nothing there. But
I wouldn't say wrong area completely. It was just a little bit behind,
like 50 yards
behind
off.
it because of the GPS glitch. But it was. I felt bad.
But I paid attention to how Jim was working it.
Yeah.
And he was doing the same thing. He was doing an actual controlled grid and trying to pick that up. Those are little things that I look for. Not that that's a pass or fail moment on a test. It's just, it lets me know where the person's at. And so that I can provide feedback in the end, which obviously I didn't have to. He nailed that one as far as the search, side of things. But, that's a good one. And Calvin, you had mentioned to someone, I think it was Ethan, maybe Matt, about, some things we could do in the future. And that's one of them, is to actually, take those people afterwards and actually show them how to do that with their dog.
Yeah. I just had another thought. My coach's brain is working. This is for another meeting, but remind me of this moment, guys. Remind me of this moment, Kenny and Calvin, for planning purposes. Anything else, Calvin?
1 hour and 33 minutes, so you can go back and look at it.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, good point. Thank you. What about you, Dan?
Honestly,
demos, to whatever I called it.
yeah, my two favorite were the two that were actually touched on right now, but the biggest thing about the grid search that I took out was the time that you have to let it sit, and I always do the 4 or 5 hour sits and everything like that. And after I left that seminar, realizing, I need to let it sit 12, 13, 14 hours, so, that was huge for me. So, and as far as the controlled search, I was next to Calvin, most of the time. And, I can tell you this right now, I was picking wrong. Like when them dogs were crittering, I was thinking that they had the line and they really didn't. So it's all about being able to read the dog. And one of the big things that you guys had mentioned is that when somebody fails a test, that 85% of the time it's because of the handler, and not being able to read your dog and pulling them off the line when you shouldn't pull them off the line, or trying to guide them and push them one way or push them the other way. And that's definitely a big thing.
Yeah. Jim, what about you from an old grizzled veteran's perspective?
Oh, I might as well just touch on the baby powder one, because that was really neat to actually go up there and spread that around and watch people walk through to see how that scent pool really keeps kicking up as you disturb it. That was, something I'd never really thought of before.
Yeah.
The grid search one, that was a great eye opener for me, because I never, I've always just went at it and let the dog work through it. And it's a heck of a lot easier just to schedule this 6-7 hours later and come to it and not fatigue the dog.
Yeah.
So,
well, let me frame the baby powder demo that you're talking about there, Jim, for those keeping score at home. So after we did the grid search demo, and we're going to watch, I have it pulled up and ready to share, and we'll watch the hyperspeed video that Ethan took. But after we did that demo, then we gathered around with the baby powder, and Kenny gave 3 people about a little jug of baby powder. So okay, go out there and walk around, and then huff this baby powder every step or so. Give a little huff. So they did. One person went out, started huffing around, and now what are you doing? The baby powder then was representing, the human scent, the human dander, obviously to a much, much greater scale, but it made it relatable to our naked eye. We could visualize what is going on in scent theory now by taking that baby powder, take a step and huff, and you could just see it huff out and then just float and drift down. And then
some of it would stay hovering.
And some of it was just hanging there in the air, because it was pretty humid and there wasn't much breeze at that point. It was just hanging there, and a lot of it was hitting the ground. So you're right, Kenny. And then he said, okay, somebody else go out there. And then all of a sudden we had 3 people out there doing baby powder huffs, doing a grid search. And then pretty quick, what did we have? We had this faint little patch of baby powder cloud on the ground that represented the human scent, the disturbed earth, and all of the disturbance being created by man. It was an illustration of what was going on there. And that was, again, I know baby powder is heavier, so there's going to be somebody out there that says, well, the molecular makeup of the baby powder and compared to, okay, got it. But it's an illustration and an example of theory. It is bringing theory to life and making it relatable.
And the other side of that is it may be more dramatic and more baby powder than what our scent really is.
Yeah.
But you put that in perspective to a dog's nose that has 350 million scent receptors and how they see odor particles.
Yes. Yeah. So we're seeing it in the volume that the dog is smelling it.
Right.
Yeah.
Relatable.
Relatable, yeah, of course. So
and
you're right.
Afterwards, when Courtney, I think it was Courtney that went out there with her dog and was walking around.
Yeah.
And you could see all that puff up and move, and just from her walking.
Yep. Oh yeah, Jim just sent me a big Jim. Yeah, Jim just texted me pictures of the cloud. I'll try to set it up and we can show that too. You can imagine what it looks like, but yeah, I'll do that. But anything else, Jim? Any other the demos or anything that was particularly noteworthy to you?
Well, I think you guys, everyone's touched on them, so I don't want to, hold you up, Matt, in your presentation. So,
Yeah, we're just talking, man. I don't have a presentation. All right, let's do it because inquiring minds want to know. Let's watch those videos. Let's watch these videos. What I want.
These are time-lapsed videos.
These are time-lapse videos. Copper's not quite that fast. Screen share. Good grief. What do I want to do here? Entire screen. This one. Share. Here we go. Oops. Add the stage. I'm going to make this full screen layout here if I can. So just to maximize it, let me here we go. So those watching at home, we're just going to play them both and you tell us which one was which. So here is I guess it doesn't matter. Let's play this one. There's Jim and Copperman. Boom. Watch it one more time. Because it's fast, watch it one more time. Search, 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 search. Slowly progressing in one direction. Oh, coming back now. Search, search, search. Got it. Lines out. Jim chases him down. Jim, you're pretty fast. Here's the other one. Oh, my goodness. Look at this. Let's watch this one 3 times. Look at this. Bam. So, I don't know, somebody tell me, what, where did
I can tell you this too. I can tell you this as well. Like I said, we made that transition on our finished test lines where we were grid searching the night before, 12 hours before, and changed it to grid searching an hour before, and it made it significantly tougher.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I don't know. To me, is it proven, Shane? That's a fair point, but it's compelling, and
I would say it's not necessarily proven to probably the more general or general community, but I can tell you it's proven to me in the amount of time that I've spent on it, and maybe that doesn't mean anything to anyone, but I wholeheartedly believe in it, and it's changed how we train dogs through grid searches. You want to get a good problem solving dog, train on these grid searches. But if you, like Ethan said there, age your grid searches longer to begin with and progress to shorter lay time grid searches, just like you would on a training line. You just do it in reverse. Instead of starting out, on a hot training line, you're going to start out on an age training line and work backwards and help your dog develop problem solving skills through grid searches.
Yes. Bear with me 1 second here. Talk amongst yourselves while I do this.
We're all going to give you an awkward silence and watch.
I know. It is a little awkward, but I want to I want to pull up that picture that Jim just sent me. There we go.
Larry Beckham says Kenny didn't leave with a bloodhound pup. There was a bloodhound pup there that I would have left with if I could have. I'll say that.
Boy, I tell you what. And then I find out that stinker Ron has the audacity to post he's got another one available. So I had to pick,
It wasn't the one that was there, was it?
No.
Oh.
No, it wasn't.
No, that one was on its way to Montana.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. So here we go. Can you guys see this? I'll make this so out too. But this is the baby powder demo there that we were talking about, where everybody. So yes, it's a little bit exaggerated, and this is Ethan, applauding everybody. Well, way to go, Ethan. But you can kind of see, what's going on there. Everybody knows what baby powder looks like when you huff it around. But it really, if we apply, in the context of what we do, it really kind of paints a picture.
It's definitely exaggerated, but that's what you need to be able to really grasp it.
Be able to illustrate it. Yeah. Yep. I agree. So there was some really neat demo stuff, man. And the other thing, that we did with the baby powder is, Kenny, what you talked about earlier is, building a little puddle in the dirt, putting it in there to represent scent, then pour water on it. The powder goes away, but where did it go? Nowhere. It's right there. And the other thing we did is put it on a hard surface and showed how, if it rains, the scent that's on a rock and it rains, how quickly it moves away from the non-absorbent surfaces, So there was a lot of good demo work that went on. We used water and oil to simulate. I mean, and everybody knows this, but until you apply it to the context of what we do, you don't necessarily make that connection.
And there was some people there that didn't even realize that happened.
Yeah.
They thought it just washed sin away and didn't even think about the oils on the skin.
Yep.
On the hide.
Yep. All right. Well, cool. Let's grab some comments here, guys, and if you any other points you want to bring up about the presentations, anything specifically? Oh,
I have a question that before maybe we get to the comments for Jim. Jim, I'd like to know what you thought of that finished test.
I thought it was very realistic. The temperature escalated things. That made things a little bit tougher than, but having the key elements of another dog coming out, a grid search, the directional challenge of the scent gap, that was one that I've never really thought about until I decided I wanted to do a finished test. And then it's like I had a lot of thoughts on how to approach that scent gap and work my way out of it. So,
and you did that perfectly, by the way. You nailed it. I mean, when we got there, you said, I'm confident we're at the scent gap, or I'm pretty sure we're at the scent gap, and this is how I'm going to work it.
So, thank you. That's the only way I could really make sense of approaching it, and I know you guys are laughing at me going through the swamp, but yeah, I didn't know where the line was, and well, we eventually found it, so that was the important part.
Well, we were watching on the Garmin, and I don't know if Matt shared this with you. We were watching on the Garmin, and it looked like you kept trying to go to the right, and Copper kept coming back to the left. So there was some scent there likely that settled down in that swamp. in that low part of the swamp, because you continuously kept going right, and Matt's like, he's going to keep going that way. He's going to get a call back, and then Copper would turn back left, and it was like this little short zigzag the whole way. Like you were going this way, and he was wanting to go back that way.
Yep.
And I'm glad that we're able to work our way out of it, and it was amazing when we came up out of the water and into the tall grass, how quick he snapped right to the line, and he was right back to work. And all right, we're going here now. So
yeah, you talk about head snaps. I thought Copper broke his neck.
So yeah, that's I'm gonna say that is a very realistic things that I've encountered in the past. You know, is a great test, is fun but very challenging. Having the timer counting down, which I didn't really put two and two together in my dumb brain as I was running the track, and Matt kept saying, well, I got a doctor's appointment in 15 minutes. I got a doctor's appointment in 10 minutes. Well, go to your doctor's appointment. So,
Oh, gee.
but
Yeah,
that adds another element, of stress to the handler. I'll say, that you don't really think about. So, but I thought it was a very good test. So I learned from it. And I know I probably dumped a quart of sweat out of my boots afterwards, but that was besides the point.
Yeah.
So,
well, yeah, and from my perspective, I knew Copper would do pretty well because I had the privilege of judging his started and his season test. And believe it or not, Jim's started test had 2 callbacks at both 90s.
yeah.
His season test, we got we did them both in the same day. We got your started, and then we went down and ran your season once you passed your started. And that season test was easier than your started test in terms of the way Copper managed it. The test line was far more complicated, but Copper and you managed it. You managed the starting line okay. You knew when he was off. I could tell you knew. And we just called you back, and once he got back on it, it was lights out from there. But once you reacquired, took him back and reacquired the line. But his season test, you didn't miss a lick, nothing. That's why I used your seasoned line overlay as the visualization of line discipline in my presentation, because he was on top of it the entire way, to include the scent puzzle. I was a little disappointed that he had to work for it. I'm not going to say he breezed through it. He problem solved his way through it perfectly, So I knew that Copper would do well on this on the finish line. I knew he would. I knew he had the ability to do well. But what I wasn't expecting is just how well everything came. Your dog is very impressive to me. The conditions were wholly unpleasant, and there was a heat index of it had to have been 100 degrees. A good share of the line was in a wide open, no shade, no canopy, tall weed field. So it had to probably be 105 degrees in those weeds where Copper was, that heat stand down there. And we came, once you got through that scent gap, it was really game over at that point. We went down, my favorite story is, there was a 50-yard long by, 15-yard wide briar patch. When I laid that line, I went between the woods and a briar patch. Copper chose to go, on the outside of that briar patch. And it was abundantly evident that he wasn't just going for a walk 20 yards off the line. He knew where that line was, and he was moving with a purpose. And the minute we cleared that briar patch, Copper said, okay, I'm going to turn right now and come back over here on the line, just like it was any given Saturday, you know, or I guess Friday it was. And I turned to Kenny. Just as Copper started. I says, Kenny, he's going right back to the line. And I showed him, and that's exactly what he did. You know, I'm like, this little snot, he knew damn well where that line was, but he just wasn't going to go all the way over there. He's just going to go this way. Follow me, Pop.
He's being lazy, is what you're saying.
I don't know if he's being lazy. I think he's being smart. He could have been a little more shade if he went on the other side, maybe, but you know, nonetheless, it was really impressive. And as I'm thinking about this, your callbacks, because you did have a callback.
Yep.
You have one or two.
Two. Because when we came down past the briars back into the woods, he dove right down. He was on his way to the river.
Yeah, I knew there was a river back there, but yeah, that's right. He was going to that low spot. I was going to say that your callback came right at that big dish that we Kenny was talking about that the thermals came out of. It's just before, it was just way back from where not way back, but back 40 yards from where I went into it. So there might have been some thermals contributing to your callback, but
so I do want to say something though, if you don't mind.
No, of course not.
When he received that callback, that actually happened right when the light switch came on, and he realized what you meant by doctor's appointment, and you could see his nerves kick in and his demeanor change. And
I'll agree with that.
And you could see Copper's demeanor change when his changed, like almost immediately, which I think was a big contributing factor on that callback. But the real interesting part of where you see the nerves kick in is whenever Jim was trying to come back to where he thought Copper was last on it. He didn't even come close to going back to where the line was.
No, he did.
And he was trying to restart him, and Copper he walked back down to where he got called, or tried to walk back down to where he got the call back to. And Copper's like, no, I'm not going down there. And he circled back, and then Jim tried to direct him that way again. And I'm sitting here thinking, oh, please don't do that. And I think I actually said something to you, Matt,
you did.
About it. And Copper just like, no, and finally Jim's like, okay, I'm just going to follow you. and Copper knew right where that line was.
And sure enough, that's right. He went right over. That's when he climbed up on that ridge, when he's riding that thermals right down that.
But it was when, Jim got nervous, and I could see Copper's demeanor change when Jim's demeanor changed. And then you could see the frustration of when Jim he was just adamant about going back to where he got called back from. And he probably doesn't even realize this.
No, I don't.
But when he finally just said, okay, I'm just going to follow you. We're almost out of time anyways. And he kind of took that weight off of himself. You could see that weight lift off of Copper, and he just went to nailing it.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. And because it's relevant to the moment, let me pull Tom Muir's comment up here. Tom says, I 100% agree. My dog picked up on my nerves in the same situation during my test. And what Tom's talking about is a started test. I administered with him, and it just crushed me because Kirby's just really methodical, and he just we started to get a little crowded for time at that second 90, and Tom's anxiety started to rise a little bit, and Curb continued to struggle. Now, I think we had a little bit of thermodynamics there too, because we were right along a creek with a good amount of water in it, and Kirby just kept wanting to go to that creek. The line was probably within 20 yards of it, and Kirby just kept pulling him in there. But you know, the advice that I would like to give to anybody who's looking to take any kind of test, but you know, if you get called back for going one way, don't go back that same freaking way again. Because sometimes I know a dumbass that did that, and
I wasn't going to say anything yet.
it didn't result in a second callback, but it just made Kenny break out in a rash. And I don't know what to do. It was the dumbest thing. I've reflected on that a lot, and you know, and so I'll just talk about my test. I did. I took a finished test and I failed the test. I timed out and I had 2 callbacks. The first one I think I can explain. All right, I don't know if I can explain, but at least I can ration my way through a scenario that I think probably caused it, and it was me. I caused it. I didn't manage a property stop right. And Ethan's feedback just was instant aha moment for me. And then Kenny, those things that you had to say just really. So I'm disappointed I didn't walk away with a blue ribbon, but I'm ecstatic of you know what I learned from that test. You know, my second callback, I had no idea why she was doing what she was doing, and by that it was foregone at that point anyway. Although I didn't know it, we weren't going to pass because we timed out, but. You know, it was invaluable, the lesson learned there for me on my finish test. I'm going to get a blue ribbon at some point, but
And I know we're getting
oh my god,
I've got to touch on Daryl's finished and elite line.
absolutely, please do. And Daryl's listening, by the way,
and especially you know when we're talking about nerves right here. When he first started. And I'll take some blame on this. You know, we had some mishaps on some scheduling, but regardless, we were sitting around talking about strategy of when we were going to run this test due to some weather coming in. And I kind of pushed him, hey, let's go ahead and do it because this weather's looking like it's going to be in around, I think it was 4:30, so we should have had plenty of time. And we get out there. And the weather started moving in much quicker than what was predicted. And he said right off the rip that she doesn't deal with weather good. And you know, if there was you know thunder, he wouldn't even go on the track till all that was clear. But anyways, we could feel the pressure drop, and as that pressure was dropping, you could see a change in the dog. And when we saw the change in the dog, we saw Daryl starting to fall apart a little bit. He was getting frustrated and
anxiety. It's real.
Oh, yeah. And at one point, I actually told everyone that's online, including Calvin, I said, hey, I'm going to go over here and have a talk with him. I can't give him the line away, but I'm going to try to get him calmed down. And we were still at the beginning. So I went over there and I talked to him, and we made the decision to take a rain delay. I say a rain delay, a weather delay, because it was thundering pretty good. But after that delay, when we came back, both the dog and Daryl had a different attitude, and you could see it in the track. I mean, Oakley was tracking with purpose. Daryl was making better decisions on the line. And then we hit the this just wall of thickness. I'll just say that. And Oakley makes the turn to the left, and Daryl made the comment, said, I know she's not on it, but I'm going to follow her. And he ended up with a callback. And then he was coming back, and she turned around and started. She was whatever she was committed to whenever he said she's not on it and got the call back. When he was coming back, she turned around and started to go back to it. And Calvin looks at me. He's looking at me. He's like, I hope she doesn't keep going that way. And sure enough, Daryl made the right call, called her back. Well, I could tell he may not see it, but he was getting a little nervous. And he was like, I don't know if I can find the line again. It's so thick in here. Well, he did, and he walked right past it. And walked right past to another callback. And then you could see a little more frustration set in, and there was only one other way to go. He got called back to the left, he got called back to the right, and he finally looked at his Garmin and seen, well, this is where I came from. This is where I got called back. This is where I called back. We're going this way. And he got through it. And he didn't know it, but he made it. Oakley made it through the scent gap, made it through another animal challenge. And he inadvertently was kind of guiding her to the right a little bit. And at one point, Calvin, I believe we were 3 yards from a callback, from a third callback?
Yep.
And Oakley came back. I'm like, oh my goodness. But what I really want to highlight is Daryl could recover from those callbacks pretty good. And that's just experience. You could see him get nervous and get frustrated, but he recovered from pretty good. And I want to touch on the elite line a little bit.
Before you do that, I got to take off. I got to go on a call.
All right. See you, Calvin.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks. The way that he manages the track is extraordinary. And if anyone is on here that tagged along on that line and seen the way that he controls the track, take note of that. Because like when I was with a group that was actively grid searching when he got to the jump site. And when he walked up there, he said, all right, at first he was laughing because I don't think he was expecting it. And he just said, all right, everyone freeze. Don't move. My dog comes up to you. Don't pay her any attention. We're going to work through this. And he handled that perfectly. He gave orders, no one getting in between me and my dog. And at one point, I purposely tried to walk in front of his dog, and he walked in front of me. He didn't say a word. He just walked in front of me and cut me off and stood there. And she worked it out. Well, then, we could hear you yelling at him, Matt, through the woods when they got to your property line.
Yeah, that was funny. Yeah.
I'm not sure how he handled it when I looked at the line and how he went around that property. He handled that well. When he got to the next property, I was actually telling him the right way to go, knowing that he was going to think that I was trying to steer him in the wrong direction. But he still handled that well. He said, okay, I understand, but this is what we're going to do. And, I really wanted to touch on that because he manages a track better than 95, probably more than that % of people I've seen. And I got to give credit for that.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you recognize it and acknowledge it too, because I knew that's how he did it because I've laid a line or two for Daryl, and I got to administer a couple of his tests too. So I knew I've never been on a real track with him, but practice lines and administered 2 tests. So I knew that's how he did it, and I have told him that we need to video the way he does this because people need to emulate his approach. So it thrills me to death to hear you acknowledge that too, because I hold Daryl in very high regard, as I do Jim and Copper and many others. But the way that he handled me being the disgruntled landowner, was extraordinarily good too. He said all of the right things to try to persuade me to let him cross his property, and in the real world, I'd have been receptive to his advances, but I couldn't be for the role I was playing on the test.
I know. I was standing right there. Geez, Matt, quit being such a jerk. Let him go.
Yeah,
Daryl sounded really good.
Yeah, you were there. Yeah. that was a lot of fun. And Frank and Dan were there at my station too, and it was a lot of fun. So, and that it's all part of it. It's not just the deer follow or the dog following the deer scent and solving the track, as you say, Kenny, which I love. I'm going to print that on a T-shirt. Solve the track. It is. It's managing the track. It's managing the tracking party. It's just all of it. And as Daryl puts it, Daryl, I know you're listening here, you're watching, and I'm going to steal it and put it out there. It's looking professional. Mm-hmm. Even when you're falling apart inside, never let them see you sweat.
And I can tell you, most people would never read that out of him.
And that's what I'm saying. He's masterful at it. And I will tell you that since I've been behind him on some practice lines and tests, I have started to model my approach to engage, track management after some of his. I employed some of his stuff on Joe when I tested with Joe for my ABTA test, and when I tested with Dave and Chad on my UBT off lead, and it I just enjoy it. It works, and there's something to be said for it. So, all right, Daryl, you can put your big fat giant head on your pillow and sleep easy. But yeah, guys, we are 2 hours and 11 minutes in, so we probably need to start.
We better hit some comments real quick.
Let's hit some comments really quick here. A bunch of good evenings, guys. All right, so let's do this one. You got it, Kenny? Have you got that? You got that picture?
Yeah. Yep, I got to share it.
So here. No, you
I
tell.
Have nothing to do with this.
Bull, don't even start that crap. No one's believing you, but you tell the story, and I'll display the picture.
Oh, okay. So I just got it in the queue for you, Matt.
Oh, there it is. Okay.
Anyways, so this picture right here. So we were at Matt's house, and I don't remember what Matt was doing, but Matt's wife came up and she started telling us. I remember what it was. I made the comment to her. I said, "Yeah, I hear you got a new puppy coming." And that opened up the door to her telling me about this puppy contract that she had with Matt.
Yes.
And part of the puppy contract was a pink tutu and dancing with the dog. So several of us were there, and someone was a pretty good did a pretty good job of photoshopping an image, and it just so happened to end up in the slide presentation on Saturday.
And it also just so happened to end up on the ABTA Facebook page today, reminding people to ask me about it. So, Ryan, I guess you understood the assignment. So that's it. So, yeah. My wife drew up this contract because she let me get a bloodhound, and a bloodhound represents every single thing she hates in a dog. I've said it here before. They stink, they drool, they shed. But she let me get one. But she drew up a contract that said all of these things, and one of which was I must put a tutu on it and dance with it like Hank Hill danced with Ladybird on King of the Hill. And there you have what people think that looks like, I guess. It was very funny. And Travis Connor commented, because there was more shenanigans that went on. Slifer put one in on me too that I didn't know was coming. My buddy, I thought he was my buddy, and he ambushed me.
That was a good one.
With I'll just say it for the people of a certain age, and all of us here are of that age, will know the reference. It was a picture reminiscent of the Blue Oyster. That is too funny. Okay, let me come through here. Kenny, if you see one you want to grab, let's do it. Vicky, yeah, we did have a great turnout and great engagement. Let's see here. There were a couple that I thought were worth pulling up here. Vicky, Andrew's located. Vicky's asking again, where in New York are you located, Andrew?
Rockland County.
Rockland County. So outside of New York City.
Yep.
So Vicky grew up in New York and now tracks in PA. So
yeah.
She put a comment on here for you to friend her on Facebook. She grew up in New York and now tracks in PA.
Okay.
Okay. I missed that one. Yeah. Vicky Church, Andrew. Vicky Church.
Vicky Church. Okay. Yep. Yeah, I track a little in PA myself. In PA, all you have to have is a big game hunting license, and you can track.
Yep. Craig Reeder, who was at the event, says, I 100% always thought grid search spread the deer scent all over. Your demonstration was an eye-opener. Great information. So it was to me too, Craig. And I think the videos were relatively conclusive, at least influential. Let me put it that way. Maybe conclusive is a strong word, but they were, to me, incredibly influential.
And I will say again, scent does get redistributed. It does.
Of course it does.
But the impact the perceived impact based on all the tests that I've done is not as great as what is perceived.
Mm-hmm.
Especially not as much as the disturbed earth, broken vegetation and just human scent cloud, because dogs smell in layers.
Yep.
And when you have an overwhelming top layer that's blinding the bottom layer, that's what happens.
Yeah. So Bob Quinn says, Kenny, would you see it with an infrared camera? And I think what he's talking about there is
that came up when we were talking about the thermals on I seen the comment come through. I don't know. I don't so I have worked with some high-end infrared camera gear at the paper mill, and you can see some of it with that stuff, but I don't think you can with the average equipment that we would buy.
Yeah. Yeah, let me just curious. If you see one, Kenny, let's snag it. But a lot of Chuck Darby, they got you, Matthew Berger. Yes, Chuck, they sure did. Yep. Matt's Disco Days. Beck says, yes, my butterfly collar.
So Randy Vick says in Georgia, hunter safety pink is legal now. Is it legal in Michigan, Matt?
No, absolutely
Let's
not.
see if we can get that put through for you.
No, absolutely not. I won't be needing a 2-2 pink goons. Okay. All right, guys. I think oh, you know what? I do have to mention this. Andrew Dillon Major says you're going to enjoy that 2.0, referencing the Doc Jewel litter, 2.0 litter. Because Dylan's got her direct brother from a different litter.
Okay. She's great already. She's just a lover.
Again, you can stop all of that right now.
So I've got a few things to share from Shane Simpson on through text here about the tracker app.
Yeah.
So there's some updates and some things coming soon. Hunter accounts now have a tracker map that they can use to contact trackers directly. If no one organically responds to their tracking request on the app, trackers can turn on and off their visibility on the map through the settings. When turned on, trackers' exact location is not given. The pin randomly moves 1 to 2 miles from their exact location for privacy reasons. And coming soon, hunters can select whether their request on the map goes only to dog teams, drone teams, or both. Toolbox added to tracker accounts where they can add each tracking dog, the breed, age, certifications, etc. This data will eventually be used in the analytics. Which
why don't we just have Shane on and let him walk through it?
We are. I talked to Shane, but I just wanted to share. There's 3 more, and then he's going to have some more that he's going to share with us. Another one, trackers will have a method that they can share to hunters in order to handle direct calls. The tracking request used with this method will only go to that specific tracker. Tracking requests completed on the app will be editable. Trackers will be able to correct data previously entered, mark tracks as proof of life, etc. And then the UBT verified badge is being replaced with the tracker verified badge. The best of the best will receive this badge, plus a few other updates. And you can get your ABTA subscription through the tracker app. But so we will be having Shane on soon to go over the app and share some of his tracking knowledge with us as well. So Matt, I'll get with you on that, but Shane and I have spoke about it.
Yeah. Yep. That sounds good. Look forward to that. Guys, any last minute thoughts? I'm not going to go around the room. I'm just going to say if anybody got a closing thought, we'll wrap it up at 2 hours, 21 minutes in.
That's rookie numbers after Saturday.
Yeah. Guys, look, in all sincerity, for everybody who came to the Michigan event, I genuinely and sincerely appreciate it.
There's some great knowledge shared there.
What's that?
There's great knowledge shared at that this weekend, and that's what we're, everyone learns from someone. So, and that was great, So I had some guys ask me some questions. I said, no matter who it is, we're all there to learn from each other.
Yeah. And we all started in the same place, knowing nothing.
Yep.
There is no shame in questions from anybody, but for everybody who came, thank you so much. I'm calling it a pretty big success for the ABTA debut. For those that helped put it on, again, I've got a shout out to Kayla Tyre, Kenny Mullins, Ralph Bennett, Carrie. I forget Carrie's last name. Back on the Ralph and Carrie, back on the home front. Calvin, Ethan, Brandy, Dakota, Hunter, and others that I'm forgetting. All of the landowners. Thank you so much. Without you, it wouldn't have happened the way it did. And we look forward.
I just want to say I appreciate these events too, because what a lot of people doesn't realize is the amount of knowledge shared back and forth behind the scenes. Just like Matt, when we were sitting in the lobby of the hotel and we were discussing some of the slides and actually we pulled up some of the stats from the tracker app.
Yes, we did.
Some of the analytics from there and discussed our experiences based on that. And that's all, we're all growing even behind the scenes preparing for this, and iron sharpens iron. I'll just leave it.
That's exactly right. Those conversations, and we, part of our battle planning for next year is intentionally building in intentional time for nothing, just to have those parking lot conversations, because there's a tremendous value there. So anyway, guys, I think we're there. You guys, I really appreciate you coming on, Andrew, for heaven's sakes. I mean this in all sincerity. Yep. I want to stay in touch. I want to see pictures of Minnie, aka Little Britches, and her progression. You have a friend in the ABTA and all of its members. And
Thank all of you guys. You guys are all great. Thank you all. Even Kenny, your wife in the parking lot, and the other lady from Florida were like dictionaries. They knew so much. Thank her for my wife and myself.
Will do. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. So anyway, guys, I appreciate it. And we'll stay in touch, but hang with me here. For those listening, thank you. Comments are great. Topic ideas, send them our ways. Anyway, guys, more of the good, less of the bad. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Thanks for following. Talk to you soon, guys.
Good night.